"This house isn't yours anymore," my stepfather growled, blocking the doorway as I stood shivering in the December cold. My mother couldn't meet my eyes. I stared at them, dumbfounded, the Christmas gift I'd bought with my last $50 hanging limp in my hand. 3 days ago, we'd spoken on the phone. Everything had seemed normal. They knew I was coming home for Christmas break from college. But, "I live here," I said, my voice embarrassingly small. "Where am I supposed to go?" My mother finally looked up from her phone. Without a word, she handed me an envelope. Inside was $500 and a bus ticket to anywhere, one way. My stepbrothers watched from the staircase, smirking. "We need the space," my stepfather said flatly. "The boys are getting bigger. We're converting your room. You're in college now, Blake. Time to grow up." I stood there, snow melting into my sneakers, as the realization crushed me. They had planned this ambush. They'd waited until I showed up at the door, luggage in hand, to tell me I was homeless for Christmas. "Can I at least get my things?" I asked, swallowing hard. My mother nodded curtly. "Mark boxed most of it up. You have 20 minutes. I walked up to what had been my bedroom for the past 8 years. The walls were already stripped bare, the furniture rearranged. Cardboard boxes lined one wall, hastily labeled "Blake stuff" in my stepfather's aggressive handwriting. As I gathered what I could fit in my backpack and suitcase, I heard laughter from downstairs. My stepbrothers were decorating the Christmas tree, a tradition we used to share as a family. I picked up my phone and booked a room at the cheapest motel I could find. Then I slipped out the front door without saying goodbye. No one came to stop me. The motel clerk looked at me with pity when I checked in on Christmas Eve. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, wondering how I'd become a ghost in my own family. I hadn't slept. As dawn broke, I watched thin light filter through the dusty blinds of the motel room. This was my new reality. No home, no family. Just me and whatever I could fit in 2 bags. My phone buzzed. A text from my sociology professor, Dr. Green. "Blake, I heard what happened. My door is open if you need a place to stay." News traveled fast in a small college town like Providence. I'd called a friend in panic after leaving my house yesterday, and somehow word had reached my professors. I packed my meager belongings and checked out, the envelope with the bus ticket burning a hole in my pocket. Where was I supposed to go? Back to empty dorms? They were closed for the holidays. To friends' homes, where I'd be an awkward charity case at their family Christmas. Outside the motel, I watched a family load presents into their car, children laughing. My throat tightened. I'd never felt so alone. I walked to a diner and ordered the cheapest breakfast on the menu. The waitress, noticing my red eyes, gave me an extra side of toast. On the house, honey. Merry Christmas. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my stepsister Amber, the only one who ever showed me kindness. "I'm so sorry, Blake." I tried to talk them out of it. I didn't respond. What was there to say? As I stepped out of the diner, I made my decision. I wouldn't use the bus ticket to run away. I'd go back to campus, find a way to stay in town over break. I wouldn't let them erase me so easily. Walking through the quiet streets toward the bus stop, memories flooded back. How different things had been before my mother remarried. I remembered her tears of joy when my stepbrothers got their acceptance letters to private high schools. How she'd framed them immediately, hanging them in the living room where everyone could see. When my acceptance letter to Rhode Island College came, a full scholarship, something neither of my stepbrothers could achieve. She'd merely nodded and said, "That's nice, Blake." The letter went into a drawer. I remembered watching from the shadows as they celebrated my stepbrother Chad C+ in algebra, a major improvement, with a steak dinner. The same week, my Dean's List notification warranted only a distracted "good job" over breakfast. Years of being the family ghost flickered through my mind. Learning to read my mother's moods, to disappear when my stepfather came home angry. Perfecting the art of needing nothing, asking for nothing, being nothing. I'd gotten so good at it that sometimes I wondered if I was actually invisible. I remember the day things changed forever, my 12th birthday, 8 months after Mom married Mark. I'd expected at least a card, maybe a small cake. Instead, I'd come home from school to find them celebrating the twins' baseball victory. My birthday wasn't mentioned all day. That night, I taught myself how to cry silently, face pressed into my pillow. I became a master at maintaining a perfect facade. Everything's fine at home. I'd tell teachers who noticed my worn clothes or missed meals. Meanwhile, my stepbrothers got new phones every year, expensive sports equipment, gaming systems. Christmas mornings were a study in contrast. their piles of gifts towering over my modest few, usually practical items like socks or school supplies. When I was 16, I stopped expecting anything different. I focused on grades, volunteering, anything to build a future away from home. My room became just a place to sleep between escapes to the library or community center. Now they'd taken even that away. What my family didn't know was that I'd been preparing for independence long before they kicked me out. Since sophomore year of high school, I'd been secretly working online as a research assistant for graduate students, saving every dollar in an account my parents knew nothing about. I'd applied for every scholarship possible, resulting in my full ride to Rhode Island College to study sociology. I'd established relationships with professors, volunteered at community organizations, built a network outside my family's knowledge. When my sociology professor, Dr. Green, first took an interest in my research on community support systems, I never imagined she'd become my lifeline. As I waited for the bus that would take me back to campus, I checked my bank account, $316. Not much, but enough to survive on if I was careful. I hadn't just been preparing financially. I'd been preparing emotionally too, slowly accepting that the family I wanted wasn't the family I had. The final rejection hurt, but it wasn't a surprise. What did surprise me was my own calm. Beneath the pain was something unexpected, relief. No more walking on eggshells. No more pretending we were a happy family. No more silent birthdays and Christmas mornings filled with forced gratitude. The bus arrived, half empty on Christmas Eve. As we drove past decorated houses with warm lights and gathered families, I didn't feel the jealousy I expected. Instead, I felt a strange sense of possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Green. I just put fresh sheets in the guest room. My husband's making his famous lasagna tonight. You're welcome to join us. I hadn't known she was married. I realized how little I knew about my professors' lives outside the classroom. Maybe there was a whole world of connections I hadn't explored yet. On the bus ride, I pulled out the one-way ticket my mother had given me. Providence to anywhere. I stared at it, this symbol of rejection that could also be a ticket to freedom. I decided to keep it. Someday, it might mean something different. The campus was eerily quiet when I arrived. Empty walkways, darkened buildings, not a soul in sight. Even the security guard at the main gate seemed surprised to see a student. "Dorms are closed, kid," he said, but let me through when I explained I was just picking up some books from the library drop box. I wasn't actually headed to the library. I needed to walk, to think, to figure out what came next. Snow began falling gently as I wandered through the empty campus, my footprints the only marks on fresh white powder. The dull ache of being unwanted followed me like a shadow. I'd felt it for years, but never this acutely. Before, I could pretend they were just busy, distracted, that I was imagining the imbalance in how they treated me versus my stepbrothers. Now the truth was undeniable. They had calculated exactly how to remove me from their lives. I found myself in front of Dr. Green's office building. I hesitated before texting her. "I'm on campus. Are you sure about your offer?" Her response was immediate. "Absolutely. Here's my address. Come whenever you're ready." 20 minutes later, I stood on the porch of a small craftsman-style house in a quiet neighborhood near campus. Dr. Green Clara, as she insisted I call her outside of class, opened the door before I could knock. "Blake, coming out of the cold," she said warmly, as if she'd been expecting a student to show up homeless on Christmas Eve. Her husband Michael was in the kitchen, the promised lasagna filling the house with delicious smells. Their son was setting the table, their daughter hanging last-minute decorations on a modest tree. They all greeted me without a hint of pity or awkwardness. "The guest room is small, but the bed is comfortable," Clara said, showing me upstairs. "Stay as long as you need to figure things out." I tried to express my gratitude, but words failed me. How do you thank someone for restoring your faith in humanity when you're at your lowest? "We have a tradition of watching terrible Christmas movies and making fun of them," Michael called up the stairs. "Hope you're prepared for Santa Claus Conquers the Martians tonight." That night, surrounded by this family who owed me nothing yet welcomed me completely, I felt something crack open inside me, a door to a different kind of future than I'd imagined. I ended up staying with the Greens through the entire Christmas break. What started as emergency shelter became something I'd never experienced, a healthy family dynamic. Clara and I talked for hours about my research interests. Michael taught me to cook more than the ramen and sandwiches I'd survived on. Their kids, Emma, 14, and Jaden, 12, treated me like an older brother, asking for help with homework and video game strategies. "You know," Clara said one evening as we washed dishes together, "I see so much potential in you, Blake. Your perspective on community support systems is unique. Have you considered graduate school after your bachelor's?" I hadn't. In my family, college itself was considered an indulgence. "I don't think I could afford it," I said honestly. "There are ways," she replied. "Assistantships, fellowships. With your grades and research interests, you'd be competitive. I could help you navigate the process." The casual way she offered this lifeline, as if believing in my future was the most natural thing, nearly undid me. Later that week, she introduced me to the director of a community center where she volunteered. They needed help with their youth program, and it came with a small stipend and housing in the center's staff quarters. "It's basic," the director warned, showing me the tiny studio apartment above the center. "But it's yours if you want it. We need someone who understands what these kids are going through." I moved in before New Year's, grateful for the privacy after years of navigating a hostile home and then the generosity of the Greens. The apartment was small but clean, with a bed, desk, kitchenette, and bathroom. More importantly, it was mine. Working with the youth program gave purpose to my days. Many of the teens came from situations like mine, unwanted, overlooked, pushed aside. I could see myself in their defensive postures and careful eyes. "You talk to us different," one girl said after a particularly intense group session. "Like you actually get it." "I do get it," I told her. "More than you know." By the time spring semester started, I had settled into a new routine. Classes during the day, youth program in the evenings, research work with Clara on weekends. My bank account was growing slowly but steadily. I rarely thought about my family anymore. I'd sent a text to my mother with my new address in case of emergencies. She'd responded with a single thumbs-up emoji. Then, in late April, the unexpected happened. My phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in months. Home. "Blake? It's Mom." I almost didn't recognize her voice. We hadn't spoken since Christmas Eve. "Hi," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you? Your professors say you're doing well." So she'd been checking up on me. I wasn't sure how to feel about that. "I'm fine," I replied. "What do you need?" A pause. "We're having a family dinner next weekend. For Mark's birthday. The boys asked if you'd come." I doubted that very much. My stepbrothers had barely acknowledged my existence when we lived under the same roof. "I'm pretty busy," I said. "Please, Blake. It would mean a lot." Her voice softened. "I miss you." Those 3 words hit me harder than I expected. Despite everything, some small part of me still yearned for my mother's love. "I'll think about it," I said finally. After hanging up, I sat motionless on my bed, emotions churning. Why would they want me there after making it crystal clear I wasn't part of the family? I called Clara, who listened patiently before offering her perspective. "Sometimes people realize what they've lost only after it's gone," she said. "Maybe they genuinely miss you. Or maybe they're feeling guilty. Either way, you're in control here, Blake. You decide what role, if any, they play in your life going forward." That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the bus ticket, still preserved in my desk drawer. Providence to anywhere. I'd kept it as a reminder of rejection, but what if it could mean something else? Over the next few days, a plan formed. I would attend this dinner, but not as the ghost they dismissed. I would go as the person I was becoming, strong, independent, with a future they couldn't imagine. I went shopping with my carefully saved money, buying clothes that reflected the new Blake, professional, confident, no longer trying to disappear. I got a haircut, standing straighter as the stylist worked. "Special occasion?" she asked. "You could say that," I replied. "I'm reclaiming something I lost." I practiced what I would say, how I would carry myself. This wasn't about revenge. It was about showing them, and myself, that their rejection hadn't broken me. It had set me free. The night before the dinner, I took out the bus ticket and placed it in my wallet. One way, but this time, I would be the one deciding where it led. I took the bus back to my old neighborhood, watching familiar landmarks slide past the window. It felt like years had passed, though it had only been 4 months. As I walked up the driveway of my former home, I noticed my hands weren't shaking. The knot of anxiety that had lived in my stomach for years was quiet. I rang the doorbell, a stranger at my own house. My mother opened the door, her smile faltering slightly as she took in my appearance. I wasn't the same disheveled student she'd turned away in December. My new button-down shirt and slacks fit perfectly. My haircut was professional. I stood straight, meeting her eyes directly. "Blake," she said, her voice unusually high. "You look different." "It's good to see you, Mom," I replied, the practiced words coming easily. I handed her the bottle of wine I'd brought, nothing expensive, but selected with Michael's guidance for the occasion. She led me into the living room where Mark sat in his usual armchair, watching sports. He barely glanced up. "Look who's here," my mother announced, too brightly. Mark finally turned. His eyes widened slightly. "Blake, didn't think you'd make it." "I said I would," I replied, my voice steady. My stepbrothers slouched in, clearly forced to come greet me. Chad and Tyler had grown taller, but otherwise looked the same, privileged, bored, slightly hostile. "Hey," Chad mumbled. "Nice shirt," Tyler smirked. "Trying to impress someone?" I smiled. "Just dressed for dinner." There was an awkward pause before my mother hurried to fill it. "Blake's doing so well at school. Top of his class, the professors say." This was news to me. She'd been checking up more thoroughly than I'd realized. "It's just sociology," Mark said dismissively. "Not like it's engineering or business." For months ago, that comment would have stung. Now I just nodded. "It's what I love." Dinner was a strange affair. My mother kept up a nervous chatter, asking about my classes, my work at the community center. Mark interjected occasionally with comments about real jobs and actual careers. My stepbrothers ate silently, looking bored. "So you're living above some community center?" Mark finally asked directly. "Doesn't sound like much of a step up." "It suits me," I replied. "I have privacy, independence, and I'm doing meaningful work." "We were worried about you," my mother said, reaching for my hand across the table. I let her touch me, but didn't squeeze back. "When you left so suddenly, when you kicked me out," I corrected gently. The table went silent. "We didn't kick you out," Mark said, his face reddening. "We gave you money. A ticket. Options. On Christmas Eve," I added. With no warning. My mother looked down at her plate. "We thought it would be easier that way." "Easier for whom?" I asked, still keeping my voice level. No one answered. As dessert was served, my favorite cheesecake, a peace offering I recognized, my stepsister Amber appeared. She'd been away at college too, and I hadn't seen her since summer. "Blake," she exclaimed, giving me a genuine hug. "I'm so glad you came. I've been telling them for months how wrong it was, what they did." The temperature in the room dropped. Mark glared at his daughter. "We don't need to rehash old business," he said sharply. "Actually," I said, placing my fork down carefully, "I think we do." The living room was deadly quiet. We'd moved there for coffee after the tense dinner, and now I stood near the fireplace, the same spot where I'd opened so many disappointing Christmas presents over the years. "I've been wondering why you invited me here tonight," I said, looking at each of them in turn. "Was it guilt? Curiosity? A need to convince yourselves you didn't do something terrible?" "Blake, please," my mother started, but I raised my hand. "I'm not angry anymore," I continued. "That's what surprises me most. I spent years in this house feeling invisible, unwanted, less than. When you gave me that bus ticket on Christmas Eve, you confirmed everything I'd always suspected. I wasn't really part of this family." Mark shifted uncomfortably. "You're being dramatic. We helped you become independent. Some kids would be grateful." I smiled slightly. "That's just it. I am grateful, not for being thrown out, but for what happened after. For the first time in my life, I found people who value me, who see me, who believe in my future." I took the bus ticket from my wallet and held it up. This one-way ticket wasn't just away from here. It was toward who I'm meant to be. My mother was crying silently. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Blake. We thought you'd be fine. You're always fine." "I am fine," I said. "Better than fine. I'm building a life that has meaning, with people who choose to have me around." "Do you know how powerful that is after years of feeling like an inconvenience?" Chad looked away. Tyler stared at his phone. Amber watched me with something like admiration. "What do you want from us?" Mark asked finally. "Money? Apologies? What?" "Nothing," I replied truthfully. "I didn't come here for anything you can give me. I came to close this chapter for myself, to look you in the eye and let you know that what you did was wrong, but it didn't destroy me. It freed me." I turned to my mother. "I used to think I needed your approval to be whole. I don't. I'm enough on my own. But you're my son," she whispered. "I love you." "I believe you do, in your way," I said gently. "But love isn't just a feeling, Mom. It's actions. It's showing up. It's making space. And you stopped doing that a long time ago." I put the ticket back in my wallet. "I should go." I have an early shift tomorrow. You could stay, my mother said quickly. Your room is. We could make up the sofa. I shook my head. I have my own place now. But thank you for dinner. As I moved toward the door, Amber followed me. I'll walk you out. Outside, the spring air was cool and fresh. Stars dotted the sky above the suburban rooftops. You're different, Amber said. Stronger. I had to be, I replied. I'm sorry I didn't do more when they made you leave, she said, her voice catching. I should have fought harder. I hugged her. It wasn't your battle, Amber. But thank you for caring. Will you come back? She asked. I looked back at the house that had never really been a home. I don't know. Maybe someday, if things change. But not as the person they want me to be. Only as who I am. I walked away without looking back, each step lighter than the last. The community center was quiet when I returned that night. I climbed the stairs to my small apartment, turned the key, and felt the familiar sense of peace as I closed the door behind me. My phone buzzed with texts from my mother. Apologies, pleased to talk more, promises that things would be different. I didn't respond immediately. Those messages would have once sent me into a spiral of hope and anxiety. Now they were just words that no longer held power over me. What surprised me most was the absence of pain. I had faced my family, spoken my truth, and walked away intact. The ache of rejection that had followed me for months was finally quiet. The next morning, I met with Clara to discuss a research project we were collaborating on, a study of chosen family structures among displaced young adults. My own experience had shaped my academic interests in ways I never could have predicted. How was it? She asked, her eyes concerned. The dinner with your family. Clarifying, I replied. I realized I've been holding on to who I wanted them to be, instead of accepting who they are. She nodded. That's a profound insight, Blake. Many people never get there. Over the following months, my life found a new rhythm. The community center offered me a permanent position as youth program coordinator after graduation. I applied to graduate programs with Clara's encouragement. My small apartment began to feel truly like home, decorated with books, photos of new friends, mementos of achievements. Amber visited occasionally. We built a careful, honest relationship as adults. My mother called less frequently as it became clear I wouldn't be resuming my role as the family ghost. Mark and my stepbrothers faded to background characters in the story of my life. The bus ticket remained in a frame on my desk, Providence to Anywhere. I'd finally understood that the Anywhere had always been up to me. When Christmas came around again, I received a card from my mother. The return address was missing, as if she wasn't sure where she belonged in my life anymore. Inside was a short note, thinking of you. Love, Mom. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I hosted a dinner at my apartment for other students and youth center kids who had nowhere to go for the holidays. We ate Michael's lasagna recipe, watched terrible Christmas movies, and laughed until our sides hurt. As I looked around at these people who had chosen to be together, I realized something profound. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's who makes space for you when no one else will. Sometimes it's who sees you when you've been invisible. Sometimes it's who hands you a plate of food and says, "You belong here," without needing to say the words at all. I framed that Christmas card next to the bus ticket. Together, they told the story not just of what I'd lost, but of everything I'd found. 3 years later, when I established a scholarship fund for students estranged from their families, I named it the One-Way Ticket Foundation. Its mission statement was simple. Sometimes the journey away from what hurts you is the journey toward who you're meant to be. To those reading this who feel unseen, unwanted, or pushed aside by the people who should love you most, your ticket to anywhere is waiting. The journey may be painful, but I promise there's a life on the other side where you are valued exactly as you are. What was your one-way ticket moment? Would you have done anything differently than I did? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below.